Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Victor again with my Ioniq 5. Now if you came here because you saw the cover photo for this video and you were confused, like what does a 999 mean? How can I still have 263 miles of range when I'm already at 85% charge? Well, we're going to explore these things in this video and hopefully give you a better understanding of what this range readout means and what you should be actually expecting when you're on the road. Now if you already know what all these mean, well, keep watching, maybe I missed something, so please let us know in the comments below. Now the first thing I think we should go over is, what does that 263 miles mean on the driver's display? Many owners like to call it the GOM, or the guessometer. And what that's really showing is just a number the car's software is producing, and the car is just trying to give you a best guess or an estimate of what it thinks your current range is. But it's taking into account how you've been driving over the past few charge cycles. So what that means is you should not assume that this will be your exact range. So let's say I'm going on a road trip and it's 263 miles away. Well, I should not be expecting to get exactly 263 miles of range, because if I do, I actually may not make it there. So let's take a look at the EPA estimates for the Ioniq 5, as that will help break it down even more. So according to the EPA, if you have a rear-wheel drive car with the 19-inch wheels, you should be getting 303 miles of range. And if you have the all-wheel drive with the 19-inch wheels, you should be getting about 256 miles of range. Now, I have the limited trim all-wheel drive, and that means I should be getting only 244 miles of range. But obviously, you saw on my guessometer display, it's showing more than that. So what's going on? So the reason that the guessometer is changing can be narrowed down to three primary reasons. Reason number one is, where are you driving? Meaning if you're experiencing a lot of uphills, you're going to be spending more energy than you typically would need to, just like a gas car. So that means you're going to be spending more energy and experiencing lower efficiency numbers. If you're driving downhill, you're going to see pretty high efficiency numbers because you're either coasting or you're actually regenerating using your regen brakes, and you're actually making energy. Number two is, how are you driving? Meaning if you're driving really aggressively and really fast, well, just like a gas car, you're going to spend more energy doing that. Whereas if you're driving slower, you're going to be using less energy. Again, just like a gas car, if you drive slower, you'll save gas. And the third one is your heating and cooling. Meaning if you use your heating and cooling with max fan speed or super high or super low temperatures, well, you're going to spend more energy heating or cooling your car. And that also affects your range readout. So let's go into a little more detail. Starting with your miles per kilowatt hour efficiency number. In this case, on the driver's display, mine says 3.1. That number refreshes after you've charged the car. Otherwise, it's showing you your most recent efficiency numbers. And the higher it is, the more range you get. The lower it is, the lower the range you get. But how do I know that? You take that number and you multiply it by 77.4. That's what we're using here in this example as the true usable battery size. Now, it's up for debate what that size actually is, but just for this exercise, we're going to assume it's 77.4. So you take whatever number you're getting, in this case 3.1, you multiply 77.4, and that's what your expected range should be on a full charge at that efficiency rating. Now on this next screen you'll see a range of different efficiency ratings, and you may think, well, why is it all over the place? Well, it's because you drive in very different settings. I don't drive the same exact road every time, but even if I did, there's going to be different traffic patterns. I'm going to be driving different speeds, it's going to be different temperature. There's a lot of things at play. But let's go on to this next example, which kind of highlights it even more. You'll see that 999 miles per kilowatt hour efficiency rating, which is crazy, right? But then if you understand why, it'll make more sense. So I live in the Manayunk-Roxborough area of Philadelphia, which essentially is built on a hill, and I live at the top of the hill. If you look at this topographic map, you'll see I experience about a 200-foot change in elevation each time I leave my home. Now, that number of 999 was a 2-mile drive where I started at home and I essentially stopped right at the bottom of the hill. We had to go buy something and we just happened to stop right there. But if you look at that next number, that 2.9 number, well, we kept going. We bought some ice cream. It was a drive-through, so the car was on. And then we proceeded to drive back uphill, back home. And as you can see, the efficiency number drops because I have to drive uphill. Uphill means I'm using more energy to get the car uphill. Whereas when I was going downhill, either my foot was not on the accelerator or I was using regen braking and actually recovering energy. So that's why that number was so high and that's why the other number was so low. And that's going to be typical. When you drive uphill, you'll see worse numbers. When you drive downhill, you'll get better numbers. Number 2 is how are you driving? The Ioniq 5 comes with different drive modes. You have Sport, you have Normal, and you have Eco. And if you just toggle through those different drive modes while looking at your guessometer number, you'll see that number actually changes. Sport mode forces power to both front and rear motors and forces you into all-wheel drive mode. At that point, the car is using more energy to do that, and it's also expecting that you're going to drive faster, that you're going to drive more aggressively. Whereas in Eco mode, it's going to try to disable the front motor once you pass 15 miles per hour, and from that point on, it's also expecting you're going to drive slower and more economically. So how fast you go plays a huge part in your efficiency numbers. So let's take a look at this chart. These are just examples of what I've seen in my own real-world usage. At slower speeds, like 25 to 35 miles per hour, I'm averaging about 5 miles per kilowatt hour, which breaks out to about 387 miles of range on a full charge. At freeway speeds, around 55 to 65, it drops to about 4 miles per kilowatt hour, which translates to about 310 miles of range. Now let's say I'm driving faster, around 65 to 75 miles per hour, then I've seen it drop to about 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour, which translates to 270-ish miles of range. But you might be thinking, well, that's still higher than the EPA rating, which is true, but there's some other factors at play. One is, well, what if you're driving even faster? I've seen people say that at around 80 miles per hour, you're going to see 3, maybe even 2 point something in terms of miles per kilowatt hour. But the big important factor here that we didn't mention yet was exterior temperatures, which was number 3. Meaning, what are you doing in terms of heating and cooling? If it's super hot outside, then are you blasting the AC? Or if it's super cold outside, are you blasting the heat? The higher the fan level setting is, the more energy it's going to use. Similarly, the higher the temperature is set, the harder the heater is going to work to try to get there. So, what that means is, with super extreme temperatures and super extreme usage, you're going to lose a lot of range. For myself, in my climate in Pennsylvania, I'm guessing around 20 to 30 miles of range loss when I use the heating or cooling system. For you, that may be different, but that's just a number that I've kind of become used to seeing. So let's go back to the chart, and you'll see here I've done a 30-mile deduction to the range. Again, that's what I typically see. And at freeway speeds, now the rating's at closer to 240 miles of range, which is close to the EPA rating. But you have to remember, what if that freeway drive is mostly uphill? Or what if I'm driving 80 or 85 miles per hour? Or what if I'm driving into the wind? Or what if it's super hot or super cold? In any of those instances, you might see range closer to 200 miles total or even less. So now that you know all this, you can better understand that the guessometer is trying its best, but there's just so much information that it doesn't know, so it can't make an accurate calculation. So you, as the driver, have all this information at your fingertips, and you actually can make that calculation yourself and have a better idea of what your range is going to be based on where you're going. So I hope that video was helpful. I know there's a lot of information, maybe it's a little confusing, but feel free to hit me up in the comment section below. And if you're interested in seeing more about the Ioniq Roxborough area, I have some more photos and videos available through the Patreon website, which will be in the description below. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.